This is the September 18th, 2009 edition of ProRodeo Sport News, the official publication of the PRCA, the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, the world's largest rodeo association. This issue includes a question and answer segment with PRCA Commissioner Karl Stressman, who is asked, "What are you most proud of from your first year as Commissioner?" Mr. Stressman answers with the following, quote, "The thing I'm most proud of from this first year is that there aren't any secrets at the PRCA. If people don't think that's true, they need to call me and I can discuss it with them. There's no secrets here and there are no hidden agendas. It's full disclosure in terms of what's good for ProRodeo and people can get answers." Mr. Stressman goes on with, "No one can come in here and challenge the PRCA about anything we didn't disclose or for us doing anything in a locked boardroom with cigars and brandy. It's not happening. And full disclosure is the way it's going to go from this point forward as long as I'm sitting in this office," unquote. Those are the brave words of Karl Stressman, Commissioner of the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. Now for a dose of reality. In fact, Mr. Stressman, I did place calls to you a couple of months ago. You would not get on the phone with me, and messages left with your staff and in your voicemail were not returned. Transparency equates with legitimacy. But in spite of your repeated claims of full disclosure, that has never been the case in the PRCA. In spite of our repeated requests for years, there has never been disclosure of rodeo animal injury and death reports from veterinarians, nor has there been disclosure of humane violators or of penalties handed down. Disclosure of injuries and penalties is routine in legitimate sports, not in rodeo. The rodeo world claims to love and respect its so-called animal athletes. I had that claim in mind when I read the August 7, 2009 issue of ProRodeo Sport News. There was lots of hype about the rodeo in Cheyenne, Wyoming, but no mention of the dozens of animals, calves, steers, and horses who were injured, or of the numerous animal victims that were killed. The August 7th issue reported glowingly on the rodeo in Salinas, California, but again, there was not one word about at least 3 calves who were killed after their legs were broken during calf roping. Did I say calf roping? Now the PRCA calls it tie-down roping, in an effort to make people forget that your victims are babies just a few months old. Tie-down roping. So much for Western tradition. The August 7th issue reported on the rodeo in Calgary, Alberta, but made no mention about at least 3 horses and 1 steer who were killed. The PRCA does not disclose contestants and stock contractors who violate supposed humane rules. Of course, there are no infractions to list when they are not first called by judges, who regularly stand by and observe but do nothing, as clear and obvious violations of PRCA humane rules are openly and intentionally committed. There's a word for that, Karl. It's called corruption. In example, many dozens of calves sustained brutal and supposedly illegal jerkdowns at the Cheyenne Rodeo. As previously mentioned, a number of those few-month-old babies were injured. You should know this, Karl, because you were at the Cheyenne Rodeo. I saw you there. Since shark investigators can see and video record those cruel, dangerous, and illegal jerkdowns, how can they evade the notice of the Commissioner of the PRCA? Those jerkdowns violate PRCA Humane Rule R9.6, which states in part, quote, "Calves may not be intentionally flipped backward," unquote. As you know, sir, that means no jerkdowns. Nevertheless, none of the many dozens of contestants who committed intentional jerkdowns in Cheyenne were called by PRCA judges. Speaking of Cheyenne, it wasn't rodeo judges who stopped the illegal shocking of horses there a year ago. The shocking ended only after shark investigators and local media exposed it for 3 straight years. Back to the present. You, sir, were at the National High School Rodeo Finals in Farmington, New Mexico, where shark investigators video documented many horses and bulls being shocked, again in violation of rodeo humane rules. Again, why is it that shark investigators can see the obvious infractions but you cannot? Even more important, why did the judges do nothing? The PRCA sponsors the National High School Rodeo Association, and your ProRodeo Sport News reported positively about the National High School Rodeo Finals. But predictably, there was no mention whatsoever about the many documented humane violations. In Woodstown, New Jersey, horses continue to be routinely and illegally shocked at Grant Harris's weekly Cowtown PRCA-sanctioned rodeo. Those horses are being shocked with the 36-inch long prod, which is a clear violation of PRCA Humane Rule 10.1.5, which limits the use of the prods and outright bans the use of prods more than 12 inches in length. As you know, Shark already has a video on YouTube exposing the shocking of horses at Cowtown, but those violations continue every week nonetheless. The only change following Shark's YouTube expose is that now Mr. Harris's cowpokes try harder than ever to hide what they're doing. The PRCA continues to be the only major rodeo association to sanction cruel and deadly steer busting, which in an attempt to be politically correct, the PRCA has now renamed single steer roping. Again, so much for honoring tradition. As you know, most steer busting is held during slack, usually during weekday mornings, well outside of and often many miles away from regular PRCA performances. That certainly sounds like a hidden agenda to me. What this means is that you agree with us that steer busting is indefensible. That's why the PRCA never brings steer busting to the National Finals Rodeo, or the NFR, in Las Vegas. That and the fact that the Nevada State Veterinarian won't even allow it because there are too many injuries. In fact, you don't even hold steer busting finals in a neighboring state. The PRCA also never disclosed the truth about injured steers that I personally video documented being locked in a trailer without veterinary care in Hobbs, New Mexico during the 2007 National Steer Busting Finals. This was, of course, another violation of PRCA humane rules. This year, the National Steer Busting Finals will be held in Guthrie, Oklahoma. Where, people might ask? Guthrie, Oklahoma, 1,148 miles away from the Las Vegas NFR. That's the way to keep all those brutalized, maimed, and dead animals out of the public eye, but it is not full disclosure. The PRCA never disclosed the truth about then Vice Chairman of the Board Charles Soilo's shocking of horses at the 2007 NFR. Shocking those horses with a hidden, non-standard shock device violated not only the humane rules of the PRCA, but also Las Vegas and Clark County criminal laws. Worst of all, everyone behind the chutes, including the judges, knew Charles Soilo was shocking horses and fixing the multi-million-dollar competition. Fortunately for the PRCA, money can buy anything in Las Vegas, and that includes a pass on charges for criminal animal abuse and fixed competition. I realize you can't kick Charles Soilo out of the PRCA because it wasn't just him. Everyone there was in on the scam. But since you are claiming full disclosure, why not acknowledge what happened and promise that it will never happen again? These incidents don't even scratch the surface of the corruption Shark investigators have uncovered in the PRCA over the past 16 years. Karl, your statements sound great, but the PRCA and you are light years away from living up to it. You said that no one can challenge the PRCA about disclosure, but I am challenging you. Publicly disclose rodeo animal injuries and deaths from now on, with veterinary reports after each and every rodeo performance. Only then will the industry attempt to minimize the cruel abuses that lead to injuries and deaths. The PRCA's ridiculous animal injury surveys, made up of a small number of unnamed, undated rodeos, don't count. We want the truth, Karl, not fiction. Publicly disclose humane violators and whatever the fines or other punishment they receive. That will ensure that there is discipline. While we are on the issue of full disclosure, how about the PRCA stop eliminating the actual jerking of calves on rodeos televised on ESPN? Let viewers see what happens to those young babies when the rope suddenly snaps tight around their necks and they get violently jerked backwards. Full disclosure would disallow the employment of a PRCA spin doctor under the duplicitous title of Animal Welfare Coordinator. Full disclosure in the PRCA will require real leadership. Full disclosure means cowboy up, the real thing, not the empty rodeo brag. Karl, I hope you will start exhibiting the strength and spirit of cowboy up that all of your predecessors have lacked. I encourage you to respond to the calls I made months ago. You say there are no secrets. You say that there's full disclosure. Well, prove it. Return my calls. In fact, email me so that there's a record. My email address is shindy@sharkonline.org. I will annotate this video to let people know whether you respond, so they can decide just what your word is worth. If you do not respond, the world will know. For what it is worth, Karl, I am pulling for you to do the right thing. This is Steve Hindy for Showing Animals Respect and Kindness.